what we're going to do today is we're going to go through an introduction of Powermate, what it is and kind of its uses. Then we'll go through the individual personal use of it. So you can use it as an individual or you can use it as a company. What, why, demonstration, and a bit of discussion. Then we're going to go into forms, which is a big part of, it's not actually, forms isn't what Power Automate is, but it is the most common entry point to Power Automate. What is it? Demonstration and discussion. Continue, Lucy. Then we're going to go into the big organizational one. So the flows and forms that are commonly going to benefit your organization as a whole. Some of the attendee examples we were given, because some of the attendees in here submitted examples. We haven't gotten to all of them, but we've gotten to some, and then a bit of a discussion at the end. What I should say is we didn't want to double up on content we did in the webinar. So this might be skimming over some things. If you're very green to this and you haven't had a look at it, there is a chance that it might be a bit complicated, and we apologize for that. We'll put a link up at the end on to see the existing one, if you go the existing webinar recording, if you wish to go back and get a bit of an idea about what it is, but we'll also do our best to explain things along the way.
And also, like I said, I'm not a techie. Everything you see today is something that I've built though for the team. So you know, it is stuff that you can do really easily if you just have a passion behind you on it.
Yep, that's right. Very good. Sorry, let's see, I'm multitasking. All right, so I've just had a customer say, can you please pass the link? Very handy. Okay, so what do we want you to take away? Understand what it can do, understand the example templates we take away, and feel free to ask for them. We can send them to you. They probably need a little bit of modification. We really want you to consider how this could work for your organization. Learn how to do some of the building. This is a tool that you might want your IT provider like us to do or someone else to do, but you do have the ability to do it yourself. It just requires a bit of time, and that's what we want to help you understand today. And then ask as many questions as you can. I want to. So what is it? This is lifted from the webinar, obviously. So it's part of Office 365. You generally will have if you have a license for Office 365 and you're not just using email as your license, you've got a Business Essentials or Business Premium or E1 or E3, you will have access to this technology. And so you're very unlikely to have to pay more to use Power Automate. It's part of the Microsoft Power Platform. It's formerly called Microsoft Flow, so when you're searching and you come across things, you might see a mention of it being called Flow. It's for both organizations and individuals, which is what we're going to show today. It's low or no code, but you can use quite a bit of code if you really want, but it doesn't require, if you're interested in using it, it does not require you to understand code, just sometimes some little tweaks. And there are many existing templates available, or you can build your own. Go. Okay, so why do it? That's a big one. Why would you consider automation or going paperless? Well, there's the environmental side. We have to admit that wasn't why we did it, but we claim it. So if anyone asks why we have gone paperless, we often will say, look, from environmental reasons, but generally we did it because we want to improve or accelerate our processes. It allows us to implement processes easily, it has been very beneficial for lockdown or COVID scenarios because we're able to do things and we weren't impacted by not being able to pass paper between each other. And it also allows us to keep tighter records of, I guess, activities. We have an example. I don't think we've got it on a slide, Lucy, because it was part of the webinar. We used to, or do we, around, no, we do, that comes later, doesn't it, around our purchase process.
Yes, no, we're going to do that one.
We'll talk about it later. We'll talk about one of the examples that was painful the old way shortly. So these are some examples that we have used or we have helped customers get implemented. So timesheets, most organizations will have some system for timesheets. You know, I think paper-based timesheets are pretty uncommon, but if you don't, this can do that. Or you've got a system that you're not satisfied with. Purchase requests, that's generally internal. Expense claims, credit card requests, which are commonly related to purchase requests but are sometimes different. Health and safety incidents or health and safety related activity, travel requests, often new client forms if you need to submit new clients or new contacts or new customers, and some staff induction areas that there's a lot as part of staff induction, including potentially contracts, that you could move to being paper-based. So there's many, many more, but these are the ones that we've come across, particularly recently, that we've found handy. So it might just help you understand, if you're thinking about yours, what are examples that could feed into this.
And also, I think a lot of the examples that you guys kindly sent through as well were tied to those sorts of things that we are seeing lots of requests for as well, which is brilliant. So, you know, the examples are tailored for some of you specifically, but you'll notice that they're pretty applicable across the board as well. So it should be good. There you go. You got a new person.
Now we have one person come in. I think you might have joined the old system. So just
all right, well, I'll kick into this side of things. So like Conan said, we're going to sort of split this into 4 main sections. And the first one we're going to start off looking at is individual flows. So these are often buttons. I don't know if any of you have actually gotten as far as getting the Flow app installed on your phone. And I keep saying Flow, it is Power Automate, but I'm used to the old way. So there's a Power Automate app that you can get installed on your phone as well, where you can interact with everything that you're going to see today just from your mobile. So individual flows will often be triggered by a little button in that app. You can also do it from your computer, but they're normally the sorts of things you might want to do when you're out and about. You can also set them up to be scheduled, so run at certain times during the week. Or triggered, so you've got a couple of options there. Often they're sort of gimmicky things. They can be achieved by other means, but they sort of keep all of these items in one place to manage, so you know these processes are sitting within your flow system. Like I say, you can create them on mobile or web. They're a really good way to get started and learn. So testing out, you know, sort of building your skills with the Power Automate system, doing these individual ones, even if they are, you know, sometimes the more gimmicky ones. You get the good feeling of success when you make one of them work, and you can see it really easily without impacting on the rest of your organization. Don't try and automate something for everybody until you've figured out how to make it work for yourself. Bit of a tip there. And they can be shared with others as well. So if you find something that works really useful for you personally, you can very easily share that with other people in your organization if you think it might benefit them. So some examples of them, setting yourself a reminder while you're on the go, getting a notification to your phone for emails from an important person like your manager, getting your weather forecast delivered daily, creating a task and planner when an email's flagged. That one can be quite neat if you use the Office 365 toolset quite extensively. The fact that you can get the different systems talking to each other can be quite a useful way to use this, and using it to do smart things with your calendar as well. So you might be out and about. You want to block out your calendar for the next hour because the meeting's rolled over early, so you can do that at the click of a button. And that's one of the ones that we're going to demo as well, just to show you how easy it is to get those sort of things set up. So I am going to hopefully pull this across here as well. So this is what Power Automate looks like. I've got a request pending. You'll be able to understand a bit more about what that means later on when we do some of the approval flows, but at the moment I'm not going to approve the expense claim for Alex.
Is that a real one, Lucy, or is that
that is a real one? I need to talk to you about that one actually, so we'll talk about that.
He's always asking for money anyway.
Yeah, but so this is what Power Automate looks like. So it's not an app that you have, desktop app you got installed on your computer. It's a website or your app on your mobile phone. You'll come here, you'll see any actions you've got straight away that do tie into your flows. But if you start scrolling down, you'll see these sort of template collections and things. Good place to get started. Jump into templates if you have a slight sort of idea about something that you're wanting to automate. Going into this template section and then just searching for a relevant keyword is a really good way to see if there's something that's already pre-built for you, so you don't need to worry about doing half of the work yourself. It can be, there's a lot of people that have probably already thought of the thing that you're trying to do, so it does save a wee bit of time. When you're looking for the individual ones, button is a good place to start because it's, like I say, that's generally how they're triggered. You'll see there's these ones here, set myself a reminder. You'll see these also, they're sort of added by Microsoft. Sometimes you'll see ones that are sort of by the community, so you can actually submit, if you make a flow that you're really proud of, you can submit it so that it gets up here as well. But you'll see these are all sort of, just little useful tasks that do just save you, 10 seconds here and there, but it does add up. And I'm just going to show you how easy it is to make one. So let's block out my 365 calendar for an hour. Click on that here. It's going to show you the few systems that it ties into. So it's using the flow button for mobile, and it's using your calendar. That's all it needs to do. It's going to just let you know down here as well which permissions it's using. And then you can click continue, and you're going to see your first flow. So this is what they actually look like. There's little sections. There you go. So they sort of build this recipe, is what they call it. And each of these, it starts off with a trigger at the top. So this one's manually triggering a flow from your phone. And then you've got an action. You can add other actions in with this little plus here, adding new steps. And then there's always a lot of configuration under here. So This one here, manually triggered, and then it's going to create an event. The only thing you need to do to customize this one is go on and pick which calendar you're wanting it to talk to. I obviously do not want to block out random time blocks in other people's calendars, so I'm going to pick my own one and just click save. And then from there, we should be able to use it. Now, because I am sharing my computer screen and not my mobile screen, I'm going to show you how you can test them out from here as well. So if you're ever setting one up that is a mobile run one, you can actually just click the run button up here as well when you're in the edit mode, just to make sure it's working. We will click run, and then we'll go and have a look at my calendar and see if it's worked. First time you run it, you'll just need to make sure it's got the permissions. Good to go. So let's see how lovely my calendar's looking at the moment. Dun, 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 loading all of the things. There we go. You see that little calendar blocked item that has just picked up. Oh, and there you go. I've got my notification to show me that I'm supposed to be doing it as well. So that's quite handy.
So one we were, sorry, Lucy. One we were playing with was blocking out your calendar for the day or the week. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Lucy? Because I know it was a little bit more difficult than you thought.
Yeah, so Microsoft's got some really good smarts in there about knowing when you've got free gaps, but free gaps that would be useful to use. So it knows that if you want to book an hour meeting, you're not going to want it to be in that only 1 hour slot you've got on the day that is between all of your other meetings. It's quite good like that. So it does have an option for just blocking out sensible times for you to focus on things. Really easy to set up a flow that'll do that for the day. It'll just go through and block out any gaps that you've got that day so that you can focus on a certain thing that you need to do. Really hard if you want to do it for the entire rest of the week. Another tip would be sometimes stuff can be a lot. You'll think that it's a lot simpler than it is. You'll go into the system and you realize Microsoft doesn't necessarily know when the end of your work week is. It doesn't necessarily know what day of the week it is now, how many days there are left, which you think it should, but it doesn't. So you can go with some things are really, really easy to do. Some things you'll give it a go and you'll sort of scratch your head for a while and then realize that maybe you just manually block out your calendar for the rest of the week. But something like this, just as sort of an example to show how easy it is just to get one of these up and running, test it out, see that it's working. And yeah, you might be the sort of person that this particular example is actually really, really useful for you when you are out and about, but more just a way for you to see how it looks. Just the wee anatomy of how this little screen looks as well. So if we click edit, we'd get back into those building blocks we were looking at. But here you can see the history of every time it's run as well. When we get to showing you a couple of the other ones that we have that run across the organization, you'll see this history is really full. Once you start to use it more and more, you can actually see that as well. You can keep tabs on how often people are interacting with it, which is pretty neat. All right, so there you go. Encourage you to get started with some individual ones just to give it a go and see if you find it useful.
So yeah, this one, we know the personal ones are often not why people come to these because they're wanting to benefit the organization. But if anyone has any questions on any of these, go for it. Feel free to just speak or put up your hand, but it's okay if we don't. One of the things we like to do about these personalizers is just to help you understand how it works, as Lucy said, the anatomy of it. We'll show a bit more on the building blocks. The idea of this is it's programming for non-programmers in a way. You're kind of building an application which would have required a programmer a long time ago, probably one of the guys from Stellar, but actually it can be built in sort of a with an application that is pretty easy to use. So yeah, if we don't have any questions or comments, we'll move on. Feel free to continue, Lucy.
Alrighty, so we're going to have a quick look at forms. Now, this obviously isn't a forms workshop, but forms are very, very valuable for a lot of the things that you're going to want to do within Flow, a lot of those company processes that you're looking to automate. The rain has just gotten so loud. I apologize if you can hear it through my microphone.
No, it's good.
Excellent. Good. All right, so what is Forms? Microsoft tool. Again, if you've got Office 365, Microsoft 365, you will have access to this. It'll be in your little look at all your apps online button. It's an online one again, it's not something that you install. It's a really easy way to get data input. Mobile friendly, you can embed your forms within Teams or within SharePoint or email them out to people as links. Very quick to build, very easy to use. And the brilliant thing about Power Automate is that it gives you really useful access to the data that you gather in these forms. So the forms itself does gather the data, it hides it away in a spreadsheet that you have to go and manually get access to every time. But you can use Power Automate very easily to get that info somewhere that you're going to be able to reference pretty regularly. So examples of when you might use this, a lot of those examples we used at the mentioned at the start are tied directly into this. So things like credit card approvals, health and safety notifications. You could use it for your induction, getting information, getting your timesheets logged, leave approval. It's one of the examples that we've been requested to show as well. Collating feedback on things. Essentially, anytime that you need to get a consistent set of information from your team or from your clients or from anyone that you're interacting with, and then take action based on that, or just put it somewhere in a really tidy way. So it's a very, very useful tool. Any commentary on that, Connor?
I was just going to say a lot of people use MailChimp at the moment, and it's not that Office 365 is necessarily better, or sorry, Forms is better than MailChimp, but you already have it. It works. It's very fast to set up, and so it could be an easy replacement for that. And it's just another system you don't need to use, as in something like MailChimp or SurveyMonkey is what I'm thinking. SurveyMonkey.
The other monkey one.
Oops. Yeah.
All right, so I'll just really quickly show you what this looks like. So again, this is all your online, so it's forms.office.com. As you can see, we use them quite a lot for things, although this is, most of these are real ones. They're not me just doing testing, which is good. I'll jump in. So this is an example of one that we use, and we're actually going to be demoing the flow of this as well. But like I say, this is in build mode. It's really easy to get things underway. You can do some good smarts on it, but if we click preview, you can actually see what it looks like to the end user. So there's some cool stuff that it does. It's just a survey, it's just a form, but you can get in here, see if we're doing purchases, we need to know where we're getting it from, why are we getting it, what's the value. You can do things like make it so it has to be a number, and it'll complain to them if they try and do anything else. You can do sort of conditional things. So for us, we need to know if it's internal or for a client. So if it's for us, it's going to ask us a different set of questions. If it's for a client, it's going to ask a different set of questions as well. So you can actually use Forms quite powerfully to do a couple of different things as well if you need to. So we've just got this one that's sort of multi-purpose. You can then use Powermate, as we'll see later on, to do different things based on what answers that they've picked in this form too, which is pretty handy. So if we go back, I will show you what it looks like. Just you can see this one here has had 673 uses, so we're pretty heavily embedded using that. If we go to click new form, this is what you're going to get. And then it's just going to start asking you what sort of questions you're wanting to put in. So you can do things like date pickers. You can do file uploads. File uploads aren't great yet, so it's where it stores the files is a bit frustrating. But it sounds like that's something the user voice, the community has asked for a bit of improvement around there as well. So that's going to become a lot more useful. You can do things like rankings and give options that they can drag and drop. You can do just basic text fields. You can make things be required, which is quite useful. And then again, you can sort of add in branching. So based on the answer to this question, we want you to see these next ones, or you don't need to do the rest of this. It's pretty handy. You can do things like subtitles as well, so that if you want to add a wee bit more information, a wee bit of an explanation, you can jump in and make them look pretty. So you can add different themes, different backgrounds, which can be quite fun as well if it's, might engage your staff a wee bit better. The share option's got a couple of different things to just pay attention to as well. So you can set it so that it's only for people in your organization, or you can set it so that anyone can respond. Now, the difference here, if you are going to be using Powermate to get this data, if it's set to only people in your organization can respond, you're automatically going to get all of their Office 365 information as well, which is brilliant because it means that you can do a bunch of other neat things and sort of customize emails and stuff that goes out after that. If you're doing it that anyone can respond and you're going to be getting information from people external to your organization, definitely make sure you have fields in there for things like getting their name, getting their email address, if you're wanting to be able to do any smarts after the fact with that as well. So just pay attention to that there too. You can collaborate on them as well. So if you're wanting to get someone else from your team to work on it with you, just grab that there as well.
So it's quite obviously Forms is not actually part of Powermate per se, but it's usually the starting point in many of the cases. So it's not, so for many of you, a lot of the examples we've put out, this is the start. This is where you get the data and how your staff will interact with it. Almost none of your staff, the thing that Lucy showed previously, the Powermate screen, no one's really going to look at that in your organization. That's for the builder, really. But you can approve things in there and develop it, but that is the building blocks, whereas most of your teams, depending on what you're asking for, their interaction with Powermate will be through a form. And it will be the start, and then
through emails, it's
That's right, in through emails. And so the forms will be, they'll submit their information, and then Power Automate will do its thing after that. And that's really what we're going to go into in more detail soon.
Exactly. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of more sort of customization and smarts you can do around this. But the important thing here is just to make sure that you jump in, have a play, make sure you got the question types and things sorted.
Is anyone in the group in the session here used forms a bit and willing to mention what they use it for?
Yeah, we used it for like a COVID-19. Do you want to work from home in level 2 kind of thing? Like how's working from home gone for you? We did a form of that. Cool. Pretty unanimous response, but yeah, we use that.
Pretty easy. Yep, that's cool. And Sarita and also John Glanders have used it as well. Feel free to talk about it or not, but that's cool. But yeah, it is a pretty good system. So that means there are a few people in here that haven't used it and ought to, which is cool.
They're so easy. They're really easy to use. You can have a form up and running in 2 minutes, and then you've got that share link, and you can start firing it out to people before you even get where your backend smarts. But just so yeah, this is what the responses look like. So like I say, you can get that open in Excel button to get all that out, but we'll show you how to set up a Power Automate to make it a wee bit more smart for you.
Cool.
Right. So
that was the discussion, I think, wasn't it? Unless anyone else has anything they want to say. Sorry, Lucy. Or any questions?
I just wanted to say one thing I came across. You can make a form yourself, and then you can actually transfer that form to a Microsoft Office group. So if you've made a group, or if you use Teams, then Teams usually have a group associated with them. Anyway, I found a wee gotcha. If you ever do that, you have to be a part of the group still to be able to do anything with the form. And there's a few funny things with permissions that can trip you up there. So I made one. I transferred it to a wellbeing group that I'm not a part of. Like I was part of the group, then I left the group, and then I wasn't able to do anything with it because I was no longer part of the group, even though it was still shared with me. So there's some funny little things with permissions you've got to watch out for.
Yeah, one thing I'd recommend, and that we've also learned while we've been doing this, not just with forms, but with all of our Power Automation flows as well, is we've got a dedicated account that's set up to manage them, because if your password expires, if you change your password or anything like that, it mucks up all of your connections. So we've got an account that's dedicated to that. It's got the permissions it needs, no more, no less. It's still got MFA on it, but it's set to not have a password that expires, which is quite useful. And it just means that it is centrally managed, which is quite useful. So yeah, you've stumbled across that as well.
Yeah, I might pick your brain about that, Lucy, actually, because I had the same thing. We've got a special account set up for it, but I still have problems with the password expiring. So I'll get in touch with you separately from this.
Yeah, cool. It's definitely definitely something you come across about 30 days after you set up your first application.
Yeah, they fall over. Anyway, but it is very good tool.
Cool. Cheers, that, John. One thing, Lucy. Is it worth showing, or is there another area where we show forms in Teams?
There is not.
Yeah, so maybe do you want to, if you're comfortable, show what, just so everyone knows, you can talk through while you're getting a read, Lucy. You can have your team interact with forms if they're using them regularly. So obviously we'll send out a form for a survey to staff or customers, and we're going to do that after this, to you guys. We'll send them out via email and ask, or via something else, and ask people to share them. But often we have these forms for things like purchase requests that they're just permanently there waiting for people to use them. And we'll have them in SharePoint, but we also have them in Teams because we use Teams quite extensively. And I thought it might be good to just show you, I guess, what it looks like, so how people interact.
These are wonderful, wonderful teams. But yeah, so you can pin them along the top here. So we've got a website, we've got a SharePoint page, which you'll see a wee bit later on, that's got all of our forms on them, but they can interact with them directly from here. So if you just click the plus, it lets you add a wee link. But if we just click on one, bear in mind, people can access this while they're on their mobile as well, which is great. So they will get this perfectly formatted for mobile while they are out and about. Brilliant if you're doing things like health and safety notifications, maybe purchase requests, maybe if they're out and about with a company credit card. But yeah, it does just mean that they can go into the one spot and get them. You can put them in the relevant channels, which is quite useful as well. So the ones that everyone needs access to are in our general channel, but maybe the health and safety ones are tucked away in there, or the engineering specific ones are tucked away. So you might find that to be quite useful too.
Yep. You could end up interacting with third parties outside with teams, and then you want a form specific to that group, or there's lots of reasons why. We have them in both, so it just allows people to have options on how they interact. I personally actually use Teams to submit the forms because I don't submit a lot of them too often, as in I don't have a need to. But and so Teams, I'm often going, okay, general, I know they're going to be in there. So yeah, it just can be good to have those options.
It's all about taking away excuses for not following a process. If you put it in all of the places that people normally are, it just means there's one less barrier for them.
Cool.
All right, I think we're actually going to fill one out in this example as well, which would be good. So organizational flows, what everybody is here for, stuff that will save you time across the board. We added up the one that we're going to show you. I think we added up, we'd saved 180 hours over the couple of years that we'd been using it, just by cutting it down from a process that could, you know, go on for weeks sometimes if pieces of paper got hidden on people's desks, not looking at anybody in particular on this call that belongs to the IT team, or, you know, and now it's down to sort of 20 minutes a lot of the time. So it's pretty useful. So these are, thanks. These are things that are used company-wide. They often replace your existing paper-based processes. They can involve people external to the organization if you need to. So, you know, you can get it to fire out emails to people or forms or any of those sorts of things. For us, major uses for these are things called approvals and for notifications. So we'll introduce you to the approval system within Powermate, which is really powerful. That's probably one of the biggest wins I think that we've had. So for approvals, approving things like documents, spending, leave, training requests. For health and safety, so notifying of incidents and making sure that information gets to the right people really quickly so that they can action it. And so that you've got it all recorded somewhere as well. So rather than trusting people to fill out the paper form in your health and safety logbook that you've got in the office, this means they can do it on the go when stuff is happening. Things like inductions, social media, Powermate's got a whole lot of tie-ins to things like Twitter, MailChimp, so you can do some pretty powerful things around there if you're heavily using them. CRM tie-ins as well, depending on what you're using. And the what else is really, you know, what other key systems are you using that this ties into that you might not know about yet? Like I showed you before, the template section, it just keeps going and going and going. And the number of connectors last time we checked was over 300. It'll be more by now. There's a lot of things.
Yeah, I'd love to ask and put it out there, and hopefully someone has some. Is anyone using them? You know, there might be a few people here that are actually along the process, or have something internally that they think this could be used for. So either using or want to know if it could. And we might be able to briefly touch on it.
Other than that,
I can probably talk to this.
Please.
So for us, we currently use like a SharePoint site to manage our leave and our health and safety incidents and injuries across our 24 kindergartens. So I can definitely see the advantage of this almost instantly because we have a relatively old SharePoint setup. So I was on a call yesterday in terms of bringing it into the 2020 space. And I think organisational flows just go hand in hand with that change that we're going to make into SharePoint. So yeah, I can definitely see the advantage.
It's great.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Just box on.
We'll kick into a wee demo. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you the pretty front end of this. So what all of your end users would, you know, your team will be interacting with if they want to get one of these approvals done. And then I'll show you what it looks like on the build side as well. So we're going to jump into our modern SharePoint site. So Sarita, you can get some tips looking at this.
Modern-ish. We wouldn't.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
So we, like I said before, we've got all of our forms up on a SharePoint site as well as in our teams, just so that it gives people a central place to go to. They might not know exactly what form they need to fill out, but they can always jump into our company forms page, which I like to think a lot of people have bookmarked. I certainly spend a fair amount of time in here. So here we go. It lists the key, I guess, power automations that we've got that kick off with the form. So we've got purchasing, we've got health and safety, we've got other things as well in there as well. But for this example, we are going to do an internal purchase. We're going to click on that link there. I think I pre-filled this out before. Hopefully it saved it. It has not. That's all good. I'll show you what it looks like though. So we're going to pretend, hey, it has. There we go. We're going to pretend we want to buy a monitor. My monitors at home are a wee bit too small. I need some bigger ones. So I've gone through, filled all of this out. Like I saw before, there's a wee bit of logic around here, but I've said that it's for internal. It's only going to be one off, and I'm going to get this to send to Conan. Now, the way we've got it set up, people pick who they send it to. For certain forms, you might have a nominated person that's always going to receive it, so you don't need to have this section. You might have people set up with sort of a hierarchy in your Office 365, which is brilliant. If people have got managers, the system can figure that out in the back end and automatically send it to the right people. You might have sort of shared things like accounts teams that are always going to need things like a purchase request as well. So, just it'll be figuring out what suits your end. For ours, this is the sort of easiest workaround way that we've got for the fact that we do sometimes have people on leave and it does chop and change a bit. So I'm going to click submit on that. Hey, your response was submitted. A couple of things are going to happen next. So I'm going to get an email confirming that I've submitted that, and it's going to show me all the details of the request that I submitted as well, just so I got a copy for my records. Conan is going to get an email, hopefully, that's going to ask him to approve the request.
And I have this,
he will do it.
Up. If you can see that, it says flow, which I didn't expect. Purchase request. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You get the point.
So because he's got the app installed as well, you can actually do it from that app really easily, approving and denying. So he's got that. He's going to hopefully go ahead and approve it or decline it. We'll wait and see what he does. Once he's chosen what he's going to do, I'm then going to get some emails as well. So we can actually go into my emails. Let's hope they're not looking too messy at the moment. Here we go. So this is that first one I talked about. So I've submitted the following request. These are all the details of what it was, and it just means that if I do need to go back and follow up, I've got all that sitting there as well. Depending on what Conan does, I'm either going to get that approved or I'm going to get it declined. And we've got an extra step set up in ours that if it does get approved, it does also automatically then send off an email to our accounts team. It'll CC me in because I requested it, but it just means that they automatically get that information. It's going to ask them to give me a purchase order number because that's the process that we follow. For you, that might be quite different. We use I think the purchase order system within Xero, so it does tie it all into there as well. But depending on what your system is on your end, we'll see what happens. But yeah, so that's essentially the end user. That's how we interact with it there. What does it actually look like though? Let's jump in to the back end. So, managing your flows. Purchase order credit card request. So like I showed you before actually on the form, we've used that over 600 times now. So we've had that in place since 2018, I believe.
It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
No, I don't know.
Go, but
about a third of them will probably lose these tests, but yeah.
Possibly. Nah, not that many. But as you can see here as well, so this is the run history for the last 28 days. These are 15 minutes that they're taking to get from the start, someone actually submitted that information, all the way through to it's actually been approved and accounts have been notified of all of that information. So that one there did take 16 hours, 16 days, 16 hours. That's still pretty good. Back in the day, like I said, it would, go missing. People would stop following the form, stop following the process because they didn't think that it was going to get done. So the fact that we do sometimes get them done in a couple of minutes is pretty neat. What does it actually look like though? So there you go. It looks quite manageable at the moment. It's just 2 boxes, which is pretty good. They're going to expand out and we're going to go through these in a little bit of detail as well. Now, a lot of the requests that we got through for demonstrations tie into the same sort of structure as well. So pay attention to this and I'll probably refer back to it a wee bit when we're talking about some of your specific examples. So how do we want this one to start? Because it's doing it based on a form. Oh, now I've got my emails open, it's making noises. We want the trigger to be when a new response is submitted, and we just need to pick which form it's going to be. So for this one, it is our purchase order credit card charge request. As you can see, we've got lots of options to pick from there. So any forms that you've created under your account will show up there. I'm logged in as our forms account as well, as our sort of overarching account for this stuff as well. So this is the live stuff that we do use. We're then going to set up a wee rule. So every time we get a response, we're going to get the details from that. So you've got your trigger when a response is submitted, and then you've gone, cool, when it's submitted, we want to get all of the details of what that person responded. As soon as you add this little get response details box in, it's going to ask you to fill out this field here. So what's the response ID? And if we click, you'll see this little box called dynamic content. So dynamic content is where you can refer to any of the information you've gotten in from the steps that you've already done. So in nice tidy fashion, the only one that we've got here so far is the response has been submitted. The only thing we can actually click there is response ID. So we're just going to pop that in there. And that's going to be what we are using to action all the rest of these steps. So what do we do next? We want to know a wee bit more about the person who submitted that request. So we've got their email because they're within our organisation. We got that when they responded to it. But we want to find out who they are because that way we can customize the notifications we're going to send out. If you wanted to get their manager, you'd be able to get that information by doing this. If you want to get their birth date for whatever reason, if you want to find out their pets' names, if you happen to have that stored in your Microsoft 365 user profile system, all of that's going to become available to you if you add this step in here as well. But we're going to click on here so that you can see all of the new fields that we've got available. So we've done that get response details section, and it's gone cool. In that response, there was all of this stuff. So this is the answers to all of the questions that we asked. So who's the supplier? Is it recurring? But you've also got the email of the person, which is what we've decided to use here so that we can get all of their information. It's got when they submitted it as well. So you can do a wee bit of stuff there. They're not in a particularly nice order, unfortunately, but you'll be able to find everything you need. So the first thing that happened after we submitted that was that I got an email. So this is the email here. So you just need to add send an email step. We want it to send to the responder's email. So that's the information from the response details. And then you can just add as little or as much information as you want to in here. You might even just have it say, hey, you submitted a request for this particular item you're going to buy, and just ignore everything else. You can kind of pick and choose what you want to show in here. But as soon as you click into this box, you'll see you've still got, scroll all the way down. You've got all of those fields from the form, but you've also now got all of the information about the person that submitted it. So like I said, there's a lot of stuff you can get about somebody from their Office 365 profile if they have chosen to fill it out. The field that we've used there is their given name, just so that we can make it nice and customized for them. So.
And we talk about no code. The only code you need to know on this is BR, which is line break. So yeah,
I figured that out. So
you don't have to do that either. It'll just make it look slightly prettier, and I'm sure people that know a bit more could make it even better. We don't even have bold in there. You could probably bold something.
It's been in place for 2 years and no one's complained yet that it's not pretty enough. So I'm happy with my breaks. So now we want to set up a condition. Now the reason we've got a condition is because we use this form for two purposes. We use it for internal purchases and we use it for client purchases. I'm only going to show you one of the sides here because it's, you just need to see one approval process. That's why there's a wee condition box here though. So you're going to start this thing called an approval. You can decide whether or not it is just one person that gets this or whether a whole bunch of people get it and need to approve it. For us, because we only pick on one person, it's just first to respond. Again, you can give it a title, you can add as much information in there. This email or this details section is what the person who receives that request is going to see. So you generally want them to have more information rather than not enough. And again, once you click into there, you'll be able to see all of those various bits of dynamic information, as they call them, that have come from the previous section. So you'll be able to give them plenty of information to make the call as to whether or not they're going to approve or reject it. Again, we've got the person's name in so they know who it is that requested it. That section where we picked from myself, Conan or Katie to see who was going to approve this is where we got this here. So that's the question, who do you need to approve this request? Because that was an email address, we can just pop it straight into there. Again, if you've got your management structure set up, your manager structure in Office 365, you can get that straight into there. If you've just got an accounts address that needs it, you can just add that straight in as well. So that's it. That's your approval started. Once that thing gets kicked off, whoever it is that's on the receiving end of that is going to get an email asking them to approve or respond to a request. We should have actually shown that because it does look quite good. But
the approval.
Yeah, the approval thing. Maybe I'll kick another one off and get it firing through to me just so you guys can see what that email looks like as well.
Yeah. I should say, as Lucy's going to show, my interaction with Power Automate as an approver only took place in email, and it's really slick. So a lot of your people you're going to be building these for might be managers and that kind of thing, and none are going to want to go to a different screen. They will just receive the request to approve an email on their phone, an email, and it's embedded in the email. So it's better than just receiving a scanned doc or something like that. So far better. So yeah, you don't have to worry too much about training your people on using something new, because most of the interaction is just going to be a slightly slicker version of an email, a far slicker version of an email, I should say.
There you go. I just sent one through to myself, so I'll pull that up as well so you can see it. There you go. So internal purchaser requiring approval. So they get this email here, and like if you've never seen one of these before, I think you'll be able to figure out what to do still, because there's a big button that says approve and a big button that says reject. So like I say, it's got all the details of the request that I've just popped through there. It says who it is that's asking it. It says up there as well. If you click on these, it gives you the option to add extra information if you want to. I'm going to reject this one so it doesn't go through to our accounts team with the
She will probably approve it too, which is annoying.
She did last time we did a demo. I got a purchase order number for a computer monitor afterwards, which was brilliant.
Like it said test, she didn't read it, but sorry, Lucy, go ahead. I forgot.
The cool thing about this is, so I'm going to click submit, and the email itself. See, I haven't left the email, and it's updated within here, so I can refer back to this. I can see that it was rejected. I can see that it was approved. I can see what comments have gone in, and I've not had to leave Outlook if I was on the app. Exactly the same. So it's really handy. It doesn't take you to, oh, and there you go. I've got an email to say it's been declined. It doesn't take you to a separate system to have to do all of that. You can if you want to, like you saw when I showed the sort of the Powermate front screen before. I did have a little approval sitting there, so you can go on there to do it, but you don't have to.
And this thing fires it off to our accounts team. Fires it, the manager has a copy, so to speak, or the approver, the submitter has a copy. So there's no sort of anything else that anyone needs to do. I should also note that, Lucy might have mentioned earlier, I used to sometimes approve things twice because I get like 5 of these a day and I'd forget about it. And so I sometimes would get scanned emails with scanned docs and I have to get them, sign them, e-sign them, print them out and sign them. And sometimes I'd approve them twice because I wasn't sure if I did. The other thing to note is we primarily, just to give a bit of context, when customers like yourselves are submitting requests to purchase things, we don't use Flow for that. We've got another system. So this is for our internal purchases and internal processes mainly. A lot of our customer related interactions is done with other systems. And that could be the same for you guys. I don't think Nude are going to want to put through a lot of their customer transactions through this, but their internal stuff, there could be a good value for that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's sort of for the not the things that happen 100 times a day, but the things that happen a handful of times a day. It's definitely relevant for that.
Yeah, and if you're in an organisation that you might go, oh, are we too small or big for this? If you currently have a situation where if someone wants to purchase, say, a keyboard or a new bloody diary or something, and the only way they do it is they ask a manager and say, can I go and purchase this? And they say yes or no. That may work, but it does sometimes fall down, and it can be good to have this process to formalize that. It makes it clean. Your staff are going to know where to go. They've got a process. They're not going to feel like they're having to beg for something, for example, and the manager's going to get an approval. It's going to make it clean and clear, and it kind of tidies up the whole process. You've got it on file. There's a lot of reasons to do these things, even if the current system is working. Or lack of a system, anyway.
Yeah, and I mean the big thing as well is that it doesn't matter where anybody is when they're doing this. If I submit a request for something and Conan's out and about, I was about to say driving his car. I hope he's not approving a request while he's driving. But if he's out having a coffee, it'll pop up on his phone and he'll just quickly be able to check it and go, yay or nay, which is pretty neat.
Speed it up.
Exactly. So the last step on this, so we've actually just demonstrated this in action, so you'll know what's coming. So depending on what the response is and that approval, so again, that's going to be a piece of dynamic content that has come in from the approval section. You can get a few things from there. You can see if they yayed or nayed it. You can see who it was. So we just want to make one rule if they've approved it, one rule if they have not. So if they've approved it, so their response equals approve, there's going to be an email sent through to the accounts team. We've just got an accounts team, so they get it straight to that email address. It's going to say this has been approved. And again, we just go through and make a nice pretty email with all the information they need to see. That comment section that you saw in the email that I got, you can pull that information out and add it in as well. So just in case they need to say anything extra to the accounts person or to the person who has received the approval, you can add that in there as well. If we go to the advanced as well, you'll see that I've added in there. The person who made the request is going to get CC'd in, and the person who approved it's also going to get CC'd in. To be fair, we actually probably have, that's too much email spam. Conan probably doesn't need to know that it's gone to the accounts team. He knows that when he clicks the button, it's gone. But it does just mean that everyone's sort of kept in the loop all the time, which is great. On the other side is the rejection email. So your purchase has been declined, and all of those extra bits and pieces as well. So either way, it sort of gets all wrapped up nicely at the end with a a final action. So either accounts get to find out about it and then they can do what they need to do, or you get told that it's declined. So this is really relevant to a whole lot of the things you guys sent in. You need to get information, you need to get someone else to see the information, and then you need to take an action. So Really, really, really powerful, this one. Cool. So
if you kind of understand that, like you could kind of follow that, once you start building it, you're going to be able to do it as well. That was to show that it is a little bit complicated, but it is visual. It references, I guess it's kind of color coded for the different functions, and yeah, it is likely very buildable for yourselves. And as always, you should start somewhere simple before you go to that, because that's taken us a long time to get to. But we do it ourselves. We could get someone to help us with the design, but we're pretty lazy, and it tends to work. And Lucy's taken it upon herself to build it and done a really good job. And I think if Lucy's pretty smart, but I think what it shows is that you don't need an expert or an IT person to do this stuff.
But also, when you're testing, if you wanted to go and test out one of those, just put yourself in the to field for all of the emails and set all of the approvals to go to yourself just while you're checking the flows to make sure they're working. It's just it's a really good way it's a low risk way to get it going and seeing if it works. So you won't accidentally get your accounts team to approve a whole bunch of things that they possibly shouldn't.
Cool.
All right. So now onto the things that you guys are actually, any questions on that? We're going to get into your examples after this, but
I guess I'm interested to know that example that we put up. Does anyone have? I'd love to know what other companies do for internal purchases, like the examples we gave, and if this could be interesting.
Yeah, John here. We have a boring paper-based system still, so it's something I've been thinking about for quite a long time now to look at automating that. It's just other priorities have gotten in the way so far. And I think that people here have an idea that a lot of stuff needs to have a real physical signature on a real piece of paper still, and even our auditors have said that about certain things. So I'm wondering do you have any feedback around auditing requirements for signatures on pieces of paper?
So for things like our internal purchase and stuff, I don't think we've probably got a audit process, a particular need for auditing, but a couple of the connectors into Powermate, there is DocuSign and there is Adobe Sign. I think those are two different ones. So you can actually tie in those ones that have proper digital e-sign off as well. So that's probably the way to.
It might be because we're a non-profit. We have to be. Our finances are audited. I think I've been told that like certain things can't be electronic only or something, which seems a bit ridiculous to me.
Anyway, in that case, one of those e-sign ones might be a really good way to tie it in.
Yep. All right. Thanks.
Anyone have any others they want to put up or want to talk to how they do internal purchases?
Our process is somebody comes to me and then I go to the CEO and then we buy it.
Yeah, and that is what it usually is.
Which is pretty bad.
Well, I think what we did is that's what we were doing, and this didn't fix it or change it, but what it did do is we just say, hey, so often the person who's submitting this will know it's going to be approved. So a discussion has taken place beforehand. They don't just send it off blindly, but it's kind of about, you or someone else saying, hey, fill in the form. It takes you 20 seconds, fill in the form,
process, hey.
Yeah, and just encouraging people to use it. And the thing is, because it's fast, because they know they're going to get an approval, because they know it's not going to get lost, and it's not a hard thing to navigate. They don't have to find. We used to have these forms, and otherwise we go, where the hell are the forms? I need to find them in the file cabinet. And usually what happens is we just circumvent it because there was enough of a barrier, or someone would have a really good excuse, like, I couldn't find a form, or the printer was broken, or some crappy thing like that. Whereas when it's online, when it's there, and it's easy use, people start to build up comfort with doing it. And I think even though your system might work, I'd say there's enough in here to try and do it, just so you got that sort of paper trail and I guess some sort of system.
No, our system doesn't really work, to be honest. So we need to figure it out. Yeah.
Cool. Sounds good. I'm glad we could be of help. Cool. We'll continue, eh?
All right. So I think we are here. We are into the attendee examples.
Actually, one more thing. What about since we've got 3 people from Development West Coast in here, what do Development West Coast do if one of you guys is willing to open it up? I'm looking at Belinda at the moment, but she's probably getting a coffee.
This is for purchasing, Conan.
Yeah, for your internal purchases, not your sort of
Yeah, Tara comes and flutters her eyelids at me, and I say, "What are you doing this time?" And we go away and buy it pretty much. So very manual and very much on a trust basis, really.
And maybe it's just starting between you two, you know, and I think this is something that you can set up in an hour or two, play around with it for a week, and then go, all right, we're going to roll it out. So it's not like we're talking about rolling out something like Microsoft Teams here. You know, this is something quite small, but yeah, thanks for that, Belinda. Appreciate you putting yourself out there.
With the someone queried before about the permissions and the signing sort of thing, I think given the permissions or the security around Microsoft these days, I think auditors would be very comfortable. I think as long as no one else has your password, particularly coming through the flow process, you'd assume all that authorization would be very legit and very palpable for an auditor.
Yeah, I agree. From my side, I don't understand why the auditors would give that as feedback, to be honest, but it's that is what we heard, so I don't know. But I'll query it again when it comes time next time for auditing.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think the other thing probably to note as well is once you've got one of these processes embedded with your team, it's a lot easier to tack on other ones. So, you know, we were able to make some pretty quick changes when we had to rapidly all start working from home around things like health and safety, and we were just able to go, cool, we've you know, there's this new process now, it's up beside all of the other ones. You know, just when you go to do this particular action, just jump in and do this sort of quick step before you do it as well. And because they're already used to going there and doing it, it made it a lot easier. Whereas if we'd had nothing and suddenly went to that and we're like, cool, you've got to notify us every time you do this, it would have been significantly more difficult, I think.
Yeah, it's a good point. We started with the purchase requests because it was not something we had all the time, but it was coming through and we had a process for it. And then subsequently adding processes has been really easy.
Yeah. All right, so these were some of the examples that came through. And I'm going to demo a couple of them. So they're all things that are pretty well either tied into some of the examples we've done or definitely applicable across the board as well. So things like annual leave requests. I mean, if you don't have a system for that, this is a great quick one to put in. So we'll kick in with that one first. So I've made a quick form. So annual leave request, it asks very basic information. You're obviously going to want to get different things depending on you know, what you're after, but I've set one up that just goes, cool, what's the start date? We're going to say I'm going on leave tomorrow. What's your end date? Finish on Friday. And why am I going? Need a break. So I'm going to click submit on that. And again, as the end user, that's all that I'm going to do until that gets approved or denied as well. So because I have set up, I'll show you the backend flow for this one as well, but because I've set it up to test it, I've set it up just to go through to me for the approvals. So I should get, hey, a wee email saying there is an approval request. Circumventing the system, approving my own leave, but there we go. Cool, so Lucy wants leave on these dates. I'm going to go ahead and approve that. The neat thing you can do for something like an annual leave request is you can get real smart and block out people's calendars, which is cool. So within Flow, I can actually now go theoretically, since that's been approved, let's see how quick it is. See if it beats me to the calendar. Come on. Hey, there we go. So I've now got annual leave booked out Thursday and Friday because it's been approved. It's so quick, like it's very rapid, and it just means that, you know, it takes that one bit out. You could have that going to, if you have sort of a shared leave calendar, you could have that going and automatically filling that out rather than relying on people doing it themselves. And you could have the title for that be, you know, the person's name so that everyone knows that it's them that's going to be away. You could do things like set reminders the day before someone's gone on leave to make sure they set their out of office or do XYZ activity that you require them to do before they head on leave. What else could you do? You could get it to send through to your payroll people so that they can automatically fill that in. Yeah, so there's some, you could go 10 steps further than we have for this little example, but it's a pretty
useful for us. I think I'll have to plan to talk to our HR person here because I think she would like that a lot.
Get in there. It took me about 10 minutes this afternoon, so I believe you will be able to get that one set up and in place pretty quickly.
Nice.
What it looks like on the back end though, again, it looks very similar to that credit card one, just a lot more simple. So when your response is submitted, get the response details, just make sure you pick that form, get the details of the person who submitted it, and then start an approval. So like I said, I've got this one going straight to me, but you could set that to go to the person's manager or to someone specific in your team who's supposed to approve things. You could also set it to go to a few different people and then make the rule that only one person needs to approve it. And that way, you know, it just sort of fires across a few depending on what your sort of structure is there. And this is where we've gone ahead and done the sort of, there you go, they've got their approval email, letting them know that it's been approved or that it's been rejected, and then that extra wee step there. So create a calendar event, call it annual leave. You could, you know, like I said, add in any of the extra fields that you want to in there, the person's name if you're putting it in a shared calendar, whatever you like. Get the start time. Now this is where one of those really small little bits of code comes in. Because you want it to block out the full day of the start date and the end date. All I've done is I've jumped in here. Oh, is it going to let me actually? Here you go. So I've gone get that end date, add a day to it, and then make my appointment go all the way to the start of that day following the end date. Again, it's just a little thing, and we can share that with you guys if this is one that you want to set up. But
and how did you find that, Lucy, knowing that you're not
trial and error?
Trial and error, okay. So you just sort of played around with it. You searched for what you need to ask.
Oh, so actually the process that I went through is I went, cool, start date, I'll put my end date in there as the end time, and I'll click go and it'll all work magically, and it didn't work magically. It blocked me out for one day. And so you sort of go, hold on, why is it doing that? Add a day works. So
cool.
And the technical people on the call will probably go, why did you do it that way? You could have done it these 3 other ways. Like I say, you'll find things that work and you'll find things that don't work. So that's just a wee option there. The other thing, because this one's blocking out annual leave, you can make it show that it shows that you're out of office. So that's what the little oof is. But you know, depending on what your purpose was, you could change it to be something else. If someone wants to request, you know, time working from home, if that's a system that you've got in place, you could tie it into that as well. So yeah, pretty quick one to get in place if you don't have anything already. And again, you could add an extra steps in there to tick off a couple of other things that you need to do.
With the approvals, you mentioned about sending it out to multiple people and only one person needs to approve. Can you also send it out so that multiple people need to approve?
Yes, so you can set it to either, you know, first person that approves it or everybody needs to.
Yeah, got it. Cool, useful.
The other neat thing you can do, which I think ties into this next on the professional development request, is if you sort of need nested approvals, so you need one person to approve it before it gets through to the next person, you just set up 2 of those. You know, if it gets through approved in the first stage, then start this next approval as well. So
that's really clear. Yeah.
Yeah, you can get pretty smart with it.
Yeah.
You know, you can also have that second person see the commentary from the first person's approval as well, so they can add sort of little notes to each other and things. So it's
all right. That's good.
Awesome. So the professional development one, I won't do a demo of that. It's exactly the same process, really. What you could do though, and I'll demo this a wee bit in the cash usage one, is if you want to have sort of a register where you're keeping track of all of the professional development requests you've had come through, you can also get those to add into a spreadsheet somewhere if you've already got something that you're tracking, just to keep all that information in there for reference as well later on, rather than it just being a approval process. It can also sort of add to a record keeping section as well. So the cash usage one. So this was sort of a request around like requests for petty cash, and I think we've got Cna on the call who asked for this one. So if you've got any extra questions, feel free to sing out. But essentially, someone wants to make a purchase. You know, they need to access some cash to make a purchase. They put through a request, and you know, they sort of go up to a person and do it now, and get a little voucher thing teared off, and get given the money. Go away, do it, bring it back, bring back the you know, any change, the receipts, that sort of things, and then it all gets manually entered into a log book or a voucher book, and also gets put into a spreadsheet. So big win in that area would be working in a form to do that first part of it for you, so the request and approval stage, but also recording all of that information directly into a spreadsheet rather than you having to sort of write it down to start with and then add it in. So the thing that I wanted to demo with that is actually the health and safety system that we used over lockdown. So we had a form that people had to fill out if they were going on site, so that we could do sort of contact tracing from our end if we needed to. We needed to know where everyone had been out and about to. So rather than just having an approval process that ran on that information that came through a form, we actually wanted it to update into a log somewhere, into a register, so that we could keep track of it. So this is what the output, I suppose, looks like. It gets all of this information from the form input, so it gets the ID of the form response, which is quite useful as well if you want to assign someone, say they've purchased, you know, put a purchase request, you could actually assign the PO number to just be the ID of the request they've put through, start time, completion time, who it is that's done it, and then it starts with all of the questions that you've asked. So for for this, we did ask for quite a lot of information, and it just keeps it all on there. Means that you can go through filter, refer back to it. But for the cash request one, you could have it automatically add into this register, you know, who it is, what it was they were purchasing, what value they thought it was going to be from, and then it's just all sitting in there when you get to the next stage of having to actually go through and update what they actually spent, you know, if there was any change. Like I said before, the uploading of files, so where you might be able to do sort of a receipt upload, it's not super useful yet because it stores the files in a bit of an annoying place in OneDrive. But once that is tidied up a wee bit, you'll probably be able to tie those sorts of things into here pretty nicely too. Now the way to do that as well, I will just show you. Assuming I have got this one here. Cool. So I'll just show you how to get your form information into a spreadsheet too, because like I say, that's a pretty helpful thing to be able to do. So again, you're going to start off with when a response is submitted, get the details, get the person's details, and then the action that you're going to want to add here in the insert new step is add a row into a table. So this is assuming that you've already got a spreadsheet set up somewhere, you've got a table there that you want them to put the information into, you've got all your columns, so just make sure you've got all your different headers and everything in there, and then it's pretty much just go through and fill the blanks, match everything up. So you specify which file it is, and it's gives you a nice little sort of file viewer to track them and make sure you get into the right thing. Pick which table.
SharePoint generally, of course. Yeah,
yep, in SharePoint, although you could also do it in OneDrive as well if you were sort of storing it personally.
There's probably Dropbox and other things you could use as well, right? Like you probably put it to a few places.
Yeah, there will be. We haven't played around with many of the external ones, but because we luckily do have everything all in the one place. But there are definitely Dropbox connectors, Google things as well. So depending on the tool set you're using, just be checking to make sure that's available. But yeah, so essentially you just go through, these are all of the headings in that table I just showed you. You just go through and match which of those responses from the forms you want to go onto there. We had a few blank ones because we had some manual follow-ups that happened afterwards as well, so that we could add extra things. So you might have, change given back, actual value of purchase, those sorts of things there as well. So that'll just be able to go through and fill out. Now, the other quite neat thing that I will just show you in here that probably wouldn't be super useful for that that particular scenario, but you can use Teams really smartly with some of these automations as well. So for this one, because I'm really nosy, I wanted to know over a time someone was going on site. It also meant that I could sort of query people if we didn't think that quite needed to happen. But the way that this happened here, so post a message to the user as Flowbot. There's a little chat bot in Teams called Flowbot. As soon as you set one of these up, it'll start popping out notifications to you. But it just popped up a message in Teams every time someone went on site with all the information, which was cool. You can get approvals going through to Teams as well. We haven't gone ahead and done that yet, but it's just another way to make it more sort of all in one place for people to look at. Yeah, it's quite a neat sort of extra step that you can do. Instead of potentially cluttering up emails, you could just pop things into Teams where people are interacting all day as well. Any questions on that side of things? No? Brilliant. All right, so the last couple of ones here. So policy document reviews. So the problem here, well, not the problem, but the situation here was every sort of month a set of policy documents came up for review, so they get reviewed annually. And the process here was that they get sent out to the team. The team are able to provide feedback on any changes or updates they think need to be done to those. So this might be things like your, various health and safety policies or computer use, any of those sorts of things, travel policies. That then went to the senior leadership team. All of those changes got made. That then went to the senior leadership team for approval, and then it went to the board for approval as well. So a few different approval steps in there, but actually getting the information out to your team is probably one that's quite there's a couple of ways you could probably do it, but I'll just demo one way which shows a few extra features of Flow as well that you might find quite useful. So again, we're going across to SharePoint. I've made up a wee little dummy folder here that I'm going to stumble upon in about 2 months and wonder what on earth I was doing. But there's a few sort of example documents. SharePoint's pretty cunning. You can add a whole bunch of different columns to add extra information onto files. So I've added one in here called review date, and I've got some example policies, and I've just gone through and added those. The way they edit them, so you just got the little information thing. You can jump down, you can see all of those columns. You can add whatever date you want to into there. So gone ahead here. So, in the scenario, you might jump into here on the 1st of every month and go, cool, that one there is actually due for review next month. Let's pretend that one in as well. I'm going to move these to my policies requiring, actually I'm going to copy these to my policies requiring feedback. Rather than move the copy that everybody in the team's looking at and actively able to refer to, I'm going to copy these, send out the ones that we might edit, and then go ahead and get any feedback on them. So I'm going to go ahead and copy them to policies requiring feedback. They're going to jump through into there, and then we're going to kick off a flow. So purpose of this flow is going to be to send those ones that are now requiring feedback out to the team. They're going to get a link to that folder so they can jump in and review any. And they're also going to get sent a forms link. So the forms link is going to be a little form that you've set up that is essentially a way to receive all the feedback that you need to on that as well. So again, you jump in, you probably make a form that has had a couple of questions, which policies you wanted to give feedback on, and what is the feedback. You could either have that just send straight to one person. Each time there's a response, send it through to the person. You could have it update into a spreadsheet as well, so they can just refer to that maybe at the end of the week if that's given people enough time. But it does just mean that you've got that all going into one place as well. And again, it's really quick and easy for people. So the way this one would look, a wee bit different, not starting off with a form this time. I've got this set to manually trigger. So I'd be able to do that from either the button on my phone, or I'd be able to do it from that run button. You might actually set this to do it on a schedule as well. So if you know that that folder is going to be updated, once every month on the 1st, you might set it to run on the 2nd and send it out to everybody. So it's kind of up to you about how you want to get it started. You're going to get the metadata of that folder. So you're going to jump into here and navigate to policies requiring feedback. And the reason you do that is so that you can then get the ID of the folder and create a sharing link for it. So again, you're going to have to put in a couple of details here, get the ID, and then it means that you are now going to have a link to that folder that people are going to be able to access from your email. You can set a couple of things here if you want it to be view only edit. If you want it to be able to go to external people, probably not if it's maybe if it's your board documents or something, people that might not have access directly into your SharePoint, you might want it to be externally accessible. And then you're going to send an email. So I was testing this, I had it sent to myself. You've probably got something like an all staff list or a particular team or group that's going to need to receive that. So you could pop that in there. And I've just made a wee email that's cool. These are the upcoming policies to review. Here is the link. Review them, provide any feedback via this form, which I've linked as well. And again, you could have that tapped into Teams or SharePoint or wherever your people are heavily interacting with too. But this way it all comes to them in one place. You might want to give them an end date as well. I've just said by the end of this week, and then they've got all of the information they need to make those decisions, which is pretty handy. So it's all on the one spot for them. I'd expect that you'd send that out over the week. You'd probably get feedback from people through, a various selection of things. It might take you a wee while to go through and update those documents as well on the back end. And then you want to send them to your senior leadership team. So again, you might jump into here. This policies requiring feedback might be where you're actually editing those documents, or you might have copies that you edit somewhere else. These might all actually be PDFs that your team can't edit, which is probably a better idea for your company policies, to be honest. But you go ahead, copy them into your documents for senior leadership team, and that one, you don't really need an approval process. You don't need them to be giving feedback via a form. So you probably just share that, to be honest, and just make sure that they've got access to that link. One other smart thing that you can do though, so say you had them all packaged up at the end, you had this sort of set of documents, or you just had one document maybe that you wanted to fire off for approval. SharePoint/Powermate have got this sort of built-in approval system, which is quite handy that you can do straight from SharePoint rather than needing to do anything too smart. You don't even need to have this set up. You could go in and do this today just for the first one. It's just going to ask you an extra couple of questions before you do it. So say we've got all the documents sitting in this folder now, we're happy, we want them to go off and get the official sign off. We're going to tick that folder, or you could tick one of the documents if that's what you're doing, and you click this little automate thing that you've probably not paid much attention to yet. You'll see a little button called request sign off. This should be there for you already as well. It might take 2 seconds to appear once you click on that for the first time. And you're just going to click it, and it's going to open up a little extra window for you. So once it loads, I've been going extremely slowly today when I've been doing these demos. Cool. So it's going to ask you 2 questions. It's going to ask you, who do you want to approve the item? So you might have, again, it might be a group that you need to send it out to, or it might just be one person. It could be your board chair. And then it's going to ask you to add a message in as well. So, it might just be a polite, hey, would you be able to review these and let us know if they're good to go? And then you click run, and that is it. What I'm going to do, just to show you something useful as well, let's get that sending off to me. Hello, test. Is what this does to this little column here you might have spotted called sign-off status. So if you do start using those sort of automation flows in here for approvals, this little column will appear magically all on its own because I've run one before, it's already sitting there. But it is going to update soon and say pending. So it'll have the word pending there until someone actually goes through and makes a decision on that folder, that approval. So as soon as it's been approved, that's going to update and say approved. It's probably not going to do it until I go out of the site and come back in. But it does just mean that you're able to jump in there and keep track of that really quickly as well, which is great. You can manually change it. Hey, there we go, pending. You can manually reverse that back out, say it's the same sort of folder or the same documents that you're sending off fairly regularly. But if you're someone who writes maybe sales proposals or does do sort of draft policy documents or things, and you do frequently send them off to people to check as well, you might find that this is quite a useful way to get approval, sort of sign off for them quite easily as well. And it might not be because you need to get them approved for any sort of process reason. It might just be, it's an easier way to know that they've looked at the document and are happier with it, happy with it. So it can be quite applicable to a few different things that you do. So that is the policy documents. The only other query that we had in there was from the Stellar guys around SQL. Now, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is, yes, you can do what you wanted to do, which was get information from a Microsoft form or from some other sort of form area and update a table, a SQL table. You can do it. It even, cunningly, already has a template pre-built, which is awesome. So you can actually just click in there and it's already pretty much built for you. You just need to say where you want to get, which form you want, which table you want. The bad news is it's a premium connector, which means you can't do it with just the straight built-in functionality with your Microsoft 365 licensing. So everything we've shown you today, you can just do with what you've got. There is extra licensing if you want to get really, really smart and be using it really frequently for things, which we can go into, but it can be quite complicated. So it might be one that we have a separate chat with you guys about. So yeah, short answer, yep, you can do it. Long answer, there's a wee bit of extra work, unfortunately, that needs to go into it.
Do you know how much, what the cost is for that premium?
Again, a wee bit difficult to answer. So there's a couple of different licensing models. You can license it per user or you can license it per flow. And I think off the top of my head, it's $15 a user, $500 a flow per month. So it's sort of, okay. Depending on the usage case, would depend on which way you were right to go there as well. So
thank you.
Yeah, but it'd be worth looking into, especially if it's going to solve a relatively serious problem for you. It will do it, which is good. It's just sort of weighing up the cost. A way that you could test it as well is you could get it updating data in like an Excel spreadsheet and then just manually import that or set up some sort of automation on that side if you've got a way to do that, just to see if the functionality is useful for you.
Yeah, we'll have a explore further. Thank you. Yeah.
Cool. All right. I think that was all of the examples in there.
Anyone have anything in there from those 5 that they want to comment on or ask any questions on before we sort of move to, I think, before we sort of move to wrap?
With the approval for documents that comes built into SharePoint, Lucy, I think I saw a note there saying that the first person who approves it will automatically, that will be the approval. Is that also something, I guess what I'd be quite interested in is how to have, say, a document that needs to be reviewed by like 4 managers and then it's only approved after all of them have approved it, and that I'd like to see the date and time when each of them approved it associated with the file. I know that's getting pretty flash, but
yeah, no, you definitely could. The sort of just the very easy click to build one from SharePoint is, like I say, it's just very easy. It's just essentially enabling a template. You'll then be able to go back into Flow and change that, or you could build one straight from scratch in Flow as well. And I think the trigger from that is from memory when I select a document or for the selected document or something. So you can run a whole bunch of stuff on there, and it'll just show up.
Yeah. Sorry, that little menu, automate, you can add flow or you can add your own automations to that. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a few that show up by default, but you can add extras in there.
Oh yeah, cool, great, thanks.
All right. Any other questions? Commentary?
Actually, I did just want to briefly outline what I did, which was very useful for us for Microsoft Teams. Just to give another example of what you can do with Flow that I found quite useful. With Teams, we started using it over lockdown, also for restorative justice conferences. So that's when someone's been a victim of a crime, and it's getting the person who committed the crime together with the offender who committed the crime with the person who was the victim of the crime. So privacy is quite important there. And what we found was that in Teams, if you invite a bunch of people to a video conference, it automatically shares all their email addresses with each other. So that was a problem for us. So we made it so that when an organizer creates a Teams meeting, it kicks off an automation based on the new entry in their calendar. Actually, no, we had to get them to invite a special invitee, and then when that invitee, their calendar entry creates a new email back to the person who organised the Teams meeting, and then that email contained a quite nicely worded invitation to the meeting, which they then just forward on to the external participants. So instead of the person's organising the thing, they go in Teams, they invite one special extra email address, and then they get a nice invitation to forward on to other people, and it doesn't share any email addresses with each other. Right. So I don't know, you can do all sorts of things with Flow, I guess, but the Flow was started by the new entry in the calendar, so you can kick off automations from just about any different thing that happens.
It's almost a good thing and a bad thing. You can do so much with it, it's hard to figure out what you want to do with it.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
That's a really neat example though.
Cool. Probably continue as we're a bit short on time.
All right, just got a couple of things to whip through. I just wanted to give you some tips, and I touched on a couple of these already. Sometimes stuff just doesn't work like you're expecting it to. And sometimes it's just buggy. So just remove whatever it was and just try doing it again. Half the time it will actually work. I got stuck on something for about 20 minutes yesterday and forgot this rule and just went back to it a wee bit later and it was working fine. So every now and then it just bug out. So apologies on Microsoft's behalf, but yeah, if it seems like it should work and it's not, just get out of it and go back into it. Things can seem easy, but actually be more complicated than you think, and vice versa. You might find something that's really complicated and this makes it a lot more simple for you. And yeah, watching out for that password expiry, getting a dedicated account can be pretty handy.
Yeah, so how to get started, as we've shown, play, I'd say tinker is probably a better word. Grab some templates, maybe work on something personally. Something like a purchase request is probably a really good one. Get it going. If you are someone that submits these requests or they flow through you and you get the CEO or the GM to approve them, perhaps it's something that you submit to them and you just start submitting it and then you go, okay, I'm going to expand it to the rest of the team. Get one that's organisation wide in use, that's quite simple perhaps, and then just start to expand on it. You don't want to go all the way right at the beginning. You want to get a bit comfortable and yeah, just practice with it. And yeah, I think get used to the back end and then consider if you've got something paper-based that is just a form, maybe start with forms and then just play around and add some little flows. So yeah, that's what I'd say. Cool. Just final opportunity for questions. What I've done is, because we're out of time, I've put a feedback link in the chat. Please fill it out. Feel free to slam us if you like, depending on what you expected. But yeah, as we just anything anyone wants to raise, comment on, ask, if you want to take any home, if you'd like us to send us any of the templates that we've done, please feel free to sing out. So I'll open up the floor.
One of the other things that we didn't really do any demos on today as well, but Teams can get really smart with stuff too. So if you think that any of this could be more beneficial to get more tied into Teams, if you're using it pretty heavily, you can do things like getting data input from a bot within Teams and things as well. So rather than using forms, actually having a bot that prompts people for info and stuff. So there's some really neat stuff you can do. Building Power Apps that have Power Automations built into them as well. You might have, rather than having all of your forms up on a SharePoint site, you might just have a Power App that people go into and say what they wanted to do. So there's a whole bunch of extra stuff that you can do that we haven't covered off. But if you're curious at all, just sing out and we can have a chat.
Cool.